Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for The Bad Batch Season 3, of course the final season for this amazing series. As you guys can see, got my clones here. Took surprisingly long time to set them up just in this very generic pose, but that's also because I never set these guys up, so I was definitely like, don't want to break any arms or anything. Also, because I have COVID, I'm probably going to be drinking a lot of water throughout this review to avoid absolutely dying and not having just like any saliva. So there may be some cuts. That is very rare for me doing my reviews, but there might be some cuts in here if I just have like a crazy coughing fit. But I wanted to let you guys know that ahead of time. If there's like just some random moments where I'm like jumping around things, it's because I literally cannot get through it. This is like my third time trying to pull it off, and I feel a lot better now because I had like the crazy coughing fits, and I was like, there's no cutting. Like I just needed to stop for a minute. So hopefully I'll be all right with my cruising with Dr. Pepper tumbler that I got during an internship at a radio station, 94.7 WCSX, classic rock radio. Anyway, Bad Batch was amazing. I wish I got to review it. It started during my break that I was doing for my YouTube channel, and then that went longer than it was supposed to. So I probably would have still done like at least the last couple episodes, but ultimately it came and went, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch it and enjoy it. And I had a great time every episode. I think, and of course, with this being a full season review, I'm going to be jumping around bits and pieces as I kind of go through the story, just to, the parts that stick out to me. But the whole situation of, excuse me, getting out of the base, specifically Omega, escaping from the base with Crosshair, then them being followed, being attacked, being put back in the base, and then that's how we end the series. Is like she escaped. They get she gets captured again, goes back, they have to track her down again, and they finally figure out where the F this base is. We have this insane season finale, which I have to say, I'm extremely surprised that they did not put Rex in there. No joke, they're like, we're gonna put in a call to Rex, and I'm like, okay, Rex is gonna have his moment. Echo had his moment, and that was super cool. He saved the guys because admittedly, they did what they could. Crosshair lost his hand, which in hindsight may have been okay for him because that was like his one, like his trigger whenever he had like his PTSD. That was his thing throughout the entire final season, was like it was specifically in his hand. So I love the way that they handled that, and I thought that was cool. And it was like, oh man, like he lost his hand. That for sure was the moment where it was like, I don't know, going into it for sure, because I even saw it a little bit late, and I was just like, oh man, I don't know who dies. I don't know if they wouldn't do like what if everybody died, but I always go that dark. Like I always go, what if they killed everybody? It's one of the things with Star Wars where when they do a lot of the Clone Wars era stuff, everything's just like, okay, well, like we always hit it with, well, they were in the movies, they weren't mentioned in the movies. Where'd they go? Are they there? Are they not there? So it's the big question that always pops up with anything when there's like a big mission going down in one of the shows. It's just like, they could be off somewhere else random, but they could also be dead. So especially for like certain characters, we always anyone of course who has like Force abilities, it's always like, well, what happened? So it's one of those things with the clones less so, but still it's like, all right, well, what does end up happening? And I was definitely worried. I was like, oh, I feel like they might kill somebody. I figured Omega would live, but I was like, what if it's just Omega and Wrecker, and like they don't even do it where it's like Omega and Hunter is like like her main dad. If you want to go with it that way, like her main dad, like what if he dies? So there was a lot there, but all of it was exciting because I'm like, first off, the visuals, every time they do a new one of these shows, they look so freaking good. Tales of the Empire, which I'm gonna have a video on that at some point too, mostly talking about what potential there is for like other Tales series. I think a lot of people felt the same, where it was like it just started off super great, and then that unfortunately it like kind of floundered compared to Tales of the Jedi. That's a super small snippet as to what I think about that one. But for Bad Batch, it was just like, man, I don't know what to expect. And visual wise, just to get there real quick, every one of these new shows, they look absolutely amazing. But story wise, don't know what to expect going into this. I'm like, all right, what if they kill someone else off? Of course, the big thing was like, well, is Tech gonna, one of the big theories was like, is Tech gonna be revealed to be alive? Specifically, is he gonna end up being revealed to be one of like the super clones and stuff like that? Which I know they have a specific name. I, of course, I barely remember character names, so I definitely don't remember like that, specific sect of characters that they called them. But I thought they were super cool. I love the fact that, you know, they have the different characters and they're like the upgrades to the Bad Batch pretty much, because they do, in a sense, they had like their own record. Like I think he was the one that had like the crazy bolo that was getting people, which was an insane weapon. It was like, it was a really good weapon, but it was like, wow, you never see like an electric bolo, a bolo in general, as like the main weapon of a character. I thought that was super unique. So I was like, wow, that's actually like a really cool idea for, you know, like just a short-term super tough character. But they had that, they had the sniper, they had the one that does like definitely the craziest kill in the whole finale, which was, you know, the clone's just like, okay, you know, we got the gas out of here, everything's good. Boom, a blade just runs through this dude, and that felt like what am I thinking? Cartoon Network Clone Wars. Just seeing the actual blade come all the way through, I was like, impressive. Most impressive. So I enjoyed that. It sucked that, you know, of course, a bunch of the clones ended up dying off, but when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, that felt like you saw the actual death happen, and seeing the characters be captured and tortured, where it's like, you know, if you guys survive, you'll of course be great assets. And I think, unless I'm mistaken, that was where it was officially revealed, like that's exactly what happened to Crosshair, and that's why they go like, you know, that's why the first like special operative that they captured, that's why he called him brother, because he was supposed to be in there, but he was like the one clone that was able to actually fight it, and that's why, you know, his head was so messed up because of, you know, all the lightning and stuff, all the torture. So I was like, wow, that's actually a really interesting way to reveal, like that's exactly why that ended up happening. He was able to fight against all of that programming, and they're like, all right, we'll lock him up. We'll keep trying, but we'll go ahead and lock him up. So I like the battle that they had there. Of course, you know, Echo got to have his moment, which is pretty cool. And then they go through the whole process of just who's gonna live, who's gonna die. You know, like you're not 100% certain, because I'm like, it was one of those finales where it really felt like I don't think they could get in and out without losing somebody. They constantly throw the hints in there. It's like, you know, I'm gonna go in. It's like, you know, don't even think about Plan 99. Like, you know, if we all go in, we're not all coming out. And it's like, we're brothers, we take the risk. And I'm like, okay, all right. They're already split up, so Echo has to do his thing. Omega's doing her thing to get the kids out, which I thought was super cool. Excuse me. And then them just being in the forest, just starting from the forest, it was like, okay, they already messed up. Wrecker gets hit by the animal in the forest. That sort of works in their favor, but of course he gets injured incredibly bad, and it's like, all right, you know, you're already messed up. I can barely use my hand. Hunter was like the only one that was in like pseudo peak condition. And then they're like, well, I know how this works. If we all go in, we're not all coming out. And I'm like, well, you know, they're kind of teasing it with Wrecker, and then it's like, but Crosshair might sacrifice himself. That it could be, you know, complete surprise if it ends up being Hunter. So there was a lot there, and it was just like, I don't know who is safe and who's not safe. I will say I'm extremely happy with the fact that everybody lived. I do not need them to die. We you know, the fact that we lost Tech and it was just like, that was it. And he didn't come back as a secret operative or anything like that. He's gone. He was just gone. It's like, okay, that's enough. That's enough. You know, despite the fact that there's 5 people, it doesn't have to be like a 7 Samurai type situation where we end up with like 1 or 2 people left. That's fine. We already lost somebody last season. Just, it was stressful enough for them to survive. And I think that was, excuse me, that was good enough as is. So I was like, okay, happy ending. I was very happy with it. So the action was good. The scene on the bridge, of course, going back to the visuals, just insane. It was like, just whenever they can do a scene where it's darker and darker, that's when you can put like the most detail in, because, you know, it doesn't have to focus on like how good the background is. So it's just like the lightning strikes and the rain, all of it was so incredibly well done. And then the way they do like the sniper shot is like, you know, if I miss, you know, like, you know, my aim's off, but it's like, you don't have to use, he didn't have to use his hand, you know, for one, of course he couldn't, it was chopped off, but that was where like his shaky aim was coming from. So it was like, look, just rest your arm, or, you know, just rest your gun on Hunter's shoulder and just trust that Omega's going to do what she needs to do. When she gives you the signal, you make the shot. And it was such a good scene, and like, you know, just visually it was fantastic, and it was just the villain who I tend not to remember names in general, but especially for villains, I'm just like, as he was a great villain, he was just calm and calculated. Also, he was played by the dude who plays one of the boys, I almost said Cricket, but one of the boys from It's Always Sunny. Love seeing him get work. I thought he did great in Westworld as well. But great character, super calm. He also had a lot, like the pressure, all of his issues and stuff. Every time something went wrong, he was like, let me just rub my hand a little bit. He did that throughout the whole season. And I was like, I like this character. He's good. He's trying. He's doing Project Necromancer, which they totally were just like, look, we know that you guys know what it is, but we also can't technically tell you exactly what it is. Because they had a whole scene where it's like, now let's say it's like, I have to get rid of all the data. That's my path. She, of course, gets followed by the one, I want to say his name was Rampart, but she gets followed by him. Amazing sequence with the fact that, and I didn't even, excuse me, I didn't even remember this because, once again, horrible with character names, so I don't remember characters doing like one big thing at the end of a season. But he was the one that basically like destroyed Camino. Like when that order came in, he was the one that actually did it. So for her to have that moment where he shoots her, and she basically knew that was coming, and she explains the whole thing, gives out the whole story, all the details. But of course, it's like, what's Project Necromancer? And then they cut away, and it's like, we know what it is, and they know that we know, but it's just like, honestly, it was one of the few things I didn't like, because I know they did it, and let's be honest, I think we all know this. They didn't say what it was specifically, because whenever the Mandalorian movie comes out, or maybe they'll even do it in Ahsoka, I guess it depends on how Ahsoka season 2 ends up going, or however all this stuff goes with them like doing the Ahsoka and Sabine off in the other galaxy, then having Thrawn come back and doing, Heir to the Empire and all that stuff. They're gonna do it in something live action. And that was the one thing where I was like, that's why they didn't do it. They know that we know it. It's also called Necromancer, Project Necromancer. It's necromancy. Like, we already know what it is. So I was like, that kind of sucks. And I know that the only reason they wouldn't give it to the Bad Batch is because of how many people don't watch the animated shows. Like, that's all there is to it. That's why, excuse me. That's why they didn't do it. And it was like, that sucks. That kind of sucked to me. And I was like, it deserves it. The Bad Batch is more than good enough to get like the definitive answer. But we know that they won't do it, because it's like, hey, like I said, built Ahsoka season 2, whatever they're doing, maybe they'll even make a brand new series if Ahsoka is just staying there. They'll just do Heir to the Empire. It'll be its own series and stuff. And then like the Mando movie that they have planned, it's just like, okay, it'll be in live action. That's where we'll get like the official, someone's going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe that, they might not say, oh my God, but they'll say something and they'll be like, Project Necromancer. It's like, yeah, okay. They could have done that in the Bad Batch. They deserve it, personally speaking. But I know how it goes. That was definitely a corporate thing where 100%, like, I would have to be told by like Dave Filoni or somebody like actually in the production directly that that's not why they did that. But I'm like 100% in my head, it just makes perfect sense. They're like, hey, there are a boatload of people that still haven't seen Clone Wars, still haven't seen Rebels. I haven't even seen Resistance, but I don't think that one's nearly as important. But it's like, people don't watch all the animated stuff. There are a lot of people that don't. So it's like, they're gonna save it. They're gonna wait. And technically they did start it with The Mandalorian, where they really like started to push that. So I don't hate it too much, but I was also like, you literally had a character ask, and then you cut away to like different action. Action was great, but they literally had to do it ask, and then they cut away so that we didn't get any of that information. And I was like, okay, sure. So if there's one gripe in like the entire finale, that was the one thing. But I was like, it's for the live action fans, especially if they are gonna do the full reveal. I would assume it's gonna be in the movie, just more than anything else, unless they could do it with Heir of the Empire, because they're, that's Thrawn and everything like that. I don't think Ahsoka's obviously wouldn't really be involved in that anyway, because they literally separated her so that they could do Heir to the Empire. So it's either going to be an Heir to the Empire, or they're just going to save it for the movie. And I would assume they do it for the movie, because that would be a part of like, oh my goodness, God, I hate being sick. But I assume it would be for the movie, because that's where you have the biggest chunk of the audience going to. Like, everyone's going to be like, all right, well, it's been from The Mandalorian all the way up through Ahsoka and all that stuff, all the other live action things, that's where the biggest crowd is really going to be. It's like, hey, we're going to do it in the movie. That's where they'll officially reveal it, and whatever other elements that like add up and all these other things, it'll be in the film. So wanted to talk about that because that definitely was one thing where it caught my attention where obviously they skipped over it. It's impossible not to miss. Or it's like, what is it? And then they cut away and it's like they're saving it for live action. So that kind of sucked because I'm like I said, personally speaking, I think the Bad Batch deserves it. But of course, when it comes to like an element of like, hey, this thing happened that's huge, it has to be live action. That's just unfortunately the way of the world. Because even amongst diehard Star Wars fans, there are a buttload of people where we still have to be like, hey, you see Clone Wars? Nah, I don't watch the animated stuff. I'm like, okay. Their loss. Unfortunately, one day we'll get them. But the season finale was absolutely amazing. The rest of the season I thought was good. Of course, we had our couple of guest moments. Asajj did not play nearly as big of a role as I thought she would. In the part that she played, like, she literally came in that one episode. It was a great episode. I love the fact that she does end up fighting the clones. Excuse me. Naturally, she beats the guys. It was just a cool episode, so I thought that was cool. Who else? We got to see Cad Bane for like half a second. I thought he would be in it more, so that was unfortunate. I love Cad Bane, so I was like, oh, Cad Bane, and he came in, he literally just did his job, and he threw the credits to the one dude that like snitched on and was just like, here you go, thanks. So I do wish we got to see more Cad Bane. I always want more Cad Bane. I hope that he comes back live action like everybody else. I'm definitely sticking to that train of there was a whisper or some beeps or whatever. That dude's alive. We better be. So, a little bit of Cad Bane. Who else did we? I can't think of her name, but Ming-Na Wen's character. I don't know why I can think of the actors, but I can't think of the assassin. But that was a good episode too. When we got to see that one, and the guys had to help her out. It was like, hey, if you guys want, your information, you help me out on the mission. We got to actually see that, so that was pretty cool. Wanda Sykes' character did show up, I think, in like 1 or 2 episodes. She was in it a lot less than I thought too, considering how much they were on the island. I thought she would have been there. And we don't see whoever the woman was that they used to work for. I don't even bother to remember. And she sucks for betraying them. She did not get her comeuppance at all. That's like the one thing. So if they did like a short and it was like tales of just beating the F out of her, I'd watch that 1,000,000 times over because I hate her now. And she could have been cool. Like, it could have just been like a thing where like they already knew and they threatened her, but she just gave them up. She just flat out gave them up. She wasn't like threatening to do it. It was like, hey, I'm sorry. Holy crap. That's probably going to be a cut. Okay. I almost died there for sure. I didn't want it. But she didn't get her comeuppance. Would have liked to have seen that. But other than that, season was good. I was surprised we didn't see Boba. I honestly thought that we'd get like a Boba Fett thing, but aside from that, I think it was a really good season. I think I wasn't concerned, as far as whenever it's like, guest characters, I don't even really think of that stuff unless it's like revealed like, oh man, Asajj Ventress, which, one episode. I think every guest that we had as far as like, oh, this is a character that's shown up before, except for maybe technically Tarkin, I think was in maybe like 2 or 3 episodes. And most of those I think were, just holograms. But other than that, every guest appearance was like, oh, that's super cool to see them. I wish we got to see a little more, specifically Cad Bane. That's just because I love Cad Bane so much in particular. But everyone else, I would say he got the least as far as cameos actually even went. I think he got the least anyway. He literally he went and got the kid, dropped the kid off. The doctor asked him stuff and he was like, you give away a lot more than you might think by even asking those questions. But then he was out and it was like, oh man, then there goes Cad Bane, there goes Toto. And that was it. They were just gone. I was like, dang, we need more Cad Bane. But thought it was a great season. The action was good. The visuals are obviously just ridiculous. Story-wise, I think they did a good job for pacing. We had the escape, the reunion of the characters. I thought was good. That lasted for a decent little bit, and then it was like, all right, the bad guys figured out what they needed to figure out. And then we got our cool battle on the planet. And then, they had them on. It was like, hey, I'm going to give myself up to save everybody. Just throw the tracker on it. It's like, I don't know if I can. We'll give it a shot. And then it failed. And I was like, that's actually kind of cool. We knew that they would find her anyway, but it was cool that it failed for a little minute. And they basically needed like a plan B. So I thought that was super cool. What else did we get from this season? We didn't get a lot of follow up as far as other characters. Like we didn't get Cody. Not that I can recall, at least. I don't think we got anything with Cody. I'm trying to remember, because once again, I'm terrible with names. I think the one clone that did survive at the end was the one dude from the last season that had like the blue, that was like the brand new clone, and everybody instantly liked him. Because as soon as he was introduced, that was his story arc of being like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And then that was pretty much it. So I believe that was him. But once again, horrible in names. But it was a good season. It was a good finale. Like the whole final season. Okay, I am alive. Just barely. I think I stopped recording for probably like 10 minutes. I had to like actually just stop for a minute. However, I wanted to talk about the epilogue. That's where I'll end things out. All the rest of the season was good. Anything I missed, I'm sure I loved it. It was great. The epilogue really shocked me in a great way, of course. I thought it was going to be, first off, once it ended, I was like, okay, it feels like there's, once it's a finale, after a certain point, I'm like, I got to check the time, because I'm like, there's got to be like a stinger or something. So when they actually, they're sitting in there just kind of watching the sunset and it was kind of fading away, I was like, okay, something's going to happen. There's like way too much time for it to, just be credits. So something's going to happen here. And when it faded to black, I assumed that it was going to be like, okay, we finished the story. The Bad Batch is good. The characters that lived have lived. They saved Omega. Everything's great. I thought for sure what they were going to do was have like an Imperial side of things as the stinger. And instead, we ended up getting a time skip, which is super cool and not what I expected at all. And then we see Omega, and it's really hard to say because I think she was 12. So if I had to guess, I would say this was like a decade later. That's how it looked to me, at the very least. It seemed like it was about a decade later. So if she was 12, about a decade later. I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. So I think, obviously, total speculation based on how she looks and everything. I think if that were the case, because this was, basically right during Order 66, it would basically be, God, like the rebellion, everything kicks up. That's like 16 years in. So it's probably even further than that. It's probably more than 10 years, realistically, because of when the rebellion would have actually started. Because obviously, technically, that's the first season of Bad Batch was like at Order 66. So then you have to skip 16 years as far as, Luke and Leia being in the first movie. They were only 16. If I'm not mistaken, my nerdy Star Wars knowledge is correct. They're only 16. So you're only skipping like 16 years. So that still could have been like in the very beginning of the rebellion. Like at the very least, like in the first film, I would assume it's like at least right after, where it's like, now she's really ready to go. It wouldn't shock me if it was, just for the fight within the very first film. Heck, we've seen Rebels like that. The whole point of everything during that, that little era is like, hey, this is where everything really does begin. Like there are all of these little pockets. They're literally the ones, I forgot what it was they did in Rebels. Where many Bothans died. They're the ones, in Rebels, I'm pretty sure that's where we see that actual mission where they get the information for that, or at least a part of it. Because obviously we also have Rogue One. But I thought that was super cool. I was very surprised, but it made perfect sense. And it was just like, man, like he's a dad seeing his daughter who's like, hey, we already fought in the war. And, he's trying to be like, hey, we already did this stuff. And obviously he was literally bred to do it. And she's like, hey, we fought to do good before. We have to keep fighting to do good, now. Like, the Empire has only gotten stronger. Of course, in this case, like they were really in the beginning of it. This was, what was it? Whatever the project was, but it was the Death Star project that Tarkin was talking about. And it was like, hey, we got to keep the fight going. Like, there's unfortunately a new war to be had, but it must be done. Like, you know what the deal was. I know what the deal was. It's clones, all that stuff. And it was just really, really good. So I don't know if we should expect to see Omega in live action. I would not be surprised, but if we did, if they did end up doing it, you know, as far as like Heir to the Empire and stuff, she'd be much older, because like I said, with the way they did the age, I'm like, well, she was only 12, and you would still have to skip, you know, like I said, that was basically still at the beginning of Order 66. And I think over the span of all 3 seasons, it may have been a year. It's possible that it was 2, but even in that case, like her leaving off to the rebellion, I still think would have to be within the realm of the first film. If not like right before, you know, obviously the rebellion was already functioning within the first movie. So, it, you know, I would assume that it was somewhere in that time zone, but it's just like, man, that's a cool idea. It makes perfect sense that she would, of course, want to go off, and considering everything that they know and have been through and have done, it makes perfect sense that she'd want to go out and be like, hey, I'm going to fight in the rebellion. That's just how it is. So I thought that was really well done. They do reference the fact that both Wrecker and Crosshair are still alive after this time skip. They're just, you know, not in that sequence. But, excuse me, it was just a moment for, you know, a man and his daughter to be like, all right, this is what you're doing, and I can't really stop you. Be careful, you know, the usual stuff. Be careful, you know, you're going off to war. Also, please don't go to war, but, you know, he has to respect it. So I love the way that it ended. And of course, it does give us that possibility that in some way, shape, or form, we will end up seeing Omega again. I would assume it would be CG. I don't think they would do live action because, like I said, unless my timing is 100% off, considering how much older she is than both Luke and Leia, that would still be like I said, like a 16-year gap, which in reality would make her like in her early 30s during that sequence actually. But I don't know, it would be interesting to see. I don't know what they would do with it, because she would have to be, shoot, I'm trying to remember what the actual time span is between A New Hope and then like Return of the Jedi, which I think is nearly a 10-year span. I always forget what the actual years are between like all the films and stuff, because it's a couple of years between each film. So I think, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's like close to 5-6 years, something like that. Probably like 7-8 realistically, but I like I said, I don't remember the exact details, but it would be interesting to see. And if they did, like I said, I do believe, if my math is right, if we saw her and it was CG, whether CG or live action, if they wanted to do like the younger version of her, it would have to be during that specific era. It would have to be like right in the first movie. Like, it would be the first movie. And this is super insane. And I think that was, I don't think they would ever do it. Highly doubt it would ever happen. But it would be insane if Star Wars Outlaws came out and we saw Omega, like an adult Omega, kind of just roaming around somewhere in there. I highly doubt that would happen, but it just popped in my head. Like, I'm always, you know, we're always like, hey, well, you know, what if we just saw Cal Kestis? What if we got like a live action Cal Kestis? What if we got to see, at this point now, we can be like, well, what if we saw Omega show up? And, you know, same thing, because with Cal Kestis, when everybody was like, what if we got that for Mandalorian? He'd be way older. So, you know, if it was the same actor, he'd have to have makeup and stuff. So same thing, if they did it for like the shows, live action or otherwise, they would still have to make yet another version of Omega's character, because she wouldn't even be the version that we saw if they went with, you know, post Empire or even post Return of the Jedi. So we'll see what happens, but she's out there. You know, maybe we'll get some novels, maybe we will get some shows, and it'll just be like her thing. Like, who knows what'll happen. But it was a very surprising, but in a very like beautiful way, a surprising epilogue to just tie in the Bad Batch to, you know, the overall saga of the entire universe. And it was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Never would have even crossed my mind that we would get a time skip epilogue, but absolutely loved it. Loved the series. It was a great way to end things out and kind of lead into, in a sense, like lead into like just the rest of all of Star Wars. Like, once you mentioned the rebellion and stuff like that, it's like, oh, okay. And then we're back into it. So whatever we end up getting next, you know, the war continues, the battle continues, whether it's after, you know, post Empire and dealing with all that stuff, or if we get some more kind of integral type stuff, you know, Star Wars Outlaws will be that. I don't know how many people are that concerned about, you know, the story that's going to, you know, have as far as within the realm of the Star Wars universe. I don't think they're going to do anything that's like crazy. I think that's just going to be like a cool side story where some cool crazy stuff may happen, but I don't think it's going to be like, oh my god, like this thing happened that's, you know, insane. But I'm sure something's going to happen there. Like they got like the Crimson Dawn in there and stuff. Like something is going to take place in that game. I'm certain of that for sure. But I look forward to that game. I know a lot of people aren't, and there are a couple of reasons for that. I don't know what their thing was, like 100 something, that super deluxe, super special edition. Who knows? But I'm gonna give that game a shot at some point. If the reviews are good, I will buy that game early, or at least, you know, when it actually comes out. But as of now, I'm like, let's wait and see. But we'll love to know your thoughts on the Bad Batch. Sorry that I had to cut this one off. I'm like barely. I thought this was gonna be easy and let's just talk about it. I legit had to stop for like 15 straight minutes to just be able to kind of get through this without coughing as much as I was earlier. So we'd love to know your thoughts on all things Bad Batch seasons 1, 2, and 3. What do you guys wish that we got to see in the final season of the series? Do you guys think that we will ever see the Bad Batch again? Despite the fact that they did do the time skip, they could easily do something in between that epilogue and the other, I guess, final moment of the episode. So I'd be curious if that ended up happening. Of course, I'd be curious if we ever saw any of the Bad Batch characters show up as, you know, older versions of themselves. But I would love to know your thoughts. Who do you guys wish we got to see as a final cameo? What storylines do you wish were probably, you know, touched on a little bit more in general? What are your overall thoughts of the way the finale ended? Because like I said, I'm glad nobody died. I don't think there's anyone that would be arguing against that personally. I think the tension was high enough. Maybe if the fight was just a little bit longer, it would be a little different as far as like, you know, like the special clones and the way that they treated them. It was like, okay, they still felt like just a touch too easy, but they were taking people out left and right. So it's not like they weren't doing anything and they didn't, you know, it's not like they didn't actually capture the guys. They did some stuff for sure and they definitely beat them, but it's still a little bit kind of felt like once they did like the little mini escape moment, it still seemed like oddly quick where they were able to kind of take them all down, and then like they were able to go to the bridge and help Omega. And it was simple. I was like, oh, they didn't get like chased down. Echo and like the other dude, they basically took all the other clones down. It was like, oh, they actually did it without having to continuously struggle for like a super long time. So I was a little surprised. I wasn't like disappointed, but I was just like, oh, I do wish like a tiny bit that we got to see a bit more action with them. But nothing that I'm gonna think about when I think of how much I love the finale in the, you know, the final season as a whole. So like I said, would love to know your thoughts on all things the Bad Batch. Is this the end for real, or are we gonna get some bits and pieces of them? I think Omega, it's almost guaranteed in some way, shape, or form she's gonna make a cameo somewhere. But I think the big question now is, should we ever expect to see the rest of Clone Force 99? So I think that's the big thing that we should wonder about. But we'll love to know your thoughts in general, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.